We entered the star system, a few ships at most, nowhere near our normal strength. We were fully covert, trying to remain quiet, and every ship was running silent. This was a stealth raid, trying to secure the remains of a human warship for study. The species had been in the galactic consciousness for only a few years now, at least in their timescale, and had confounded the galaxy. We wanted to know why. We scanned the system and instantly we noticed our intel was wrong. There was one small mining ship and one small station orbiting a barren moon. That was it. It was the size of a frigate, small but clearly just an unarmed mining vessel. We moved to give it a more detailed scan, and my engineers were practically salivating at the sight of the thing. I tried to wonder why. It looked more than just a bit primitive. It was a long, thin, rectangular, cuboid shape with rocket engines in the back, heavy-duty mining drills with an odd blue glow to them, and a single glass cockpit. I had never seen them before. Odd circular things with 3 heads with large grinding teeth that spun around in counter-rotating directions all at once. My engineers took a look at the readouts and were salivating at the sight of it, some even, bashing their heads against their consoles crying, "Why didn't we think of that?" Nor a similar facsimile thereof. I wondered why they were so jubilant at the sight and got my chance to see why. It headed towards a large iron-rich asteroid and stopped near its surface. It gingerly pressed its 4 large drill heads against the rock, and like a knife through water, the rock began to disintegrate into tiny particles of mineral-rich dust. The engineers were beside themselves with happiness as they watched it work its magic, the drills themselves having large tubes in the middle just behind the drills, pumping the rock dust through pipes into 2 large cargo containers placed in the rear, just in front of the engines. He chewed through the massive rock and disappeared inside it like a worm in a fruit. We sat in silence, running what few scans we could on it. It was swirling around inside the asteroid, digging it out and hollowing it out. Then it popped out of the rock on the other side, slower, heavier. Again, the engineers nearly wet themselves as they scanned away. Finally, I had enough of all the cooing and asked why. The engineers told me that due to low gravity from our homeworld, it was easier to just use lasers, or in case of our primitive ancestors, stone saws and cutting blocks to just cut out a small block of solid material from a surface or a mineral, deposit, then carry the whole thing to a refinery or smelter. These humans, coming from a high-gravity world, didn't have that luxury, and so had to crush or destroy rocks, transporting them elsewhere for processing. Only this was a lot more impressive, a lot more advanced. They were taking riskier scans, but were able to tell me that the ship had its own sorting and refining system, at least to an extent, built into its hull. The pipes and sensors were making sure that, because it was fine particulate dust, a hidden filtration mechanism sorted through it all, and one cargo container contained ejected waste dust from the rock, and the other had only pure iron-rich dust. Now I understood why this thing was making my engineers salivate like they were staring at a prime rib platter. It turned to face the asteroid and released some kind of small device that slipped into the hole it just made. A gravity bomb of some kind, as we quickly discovered, as the asteroid shattered into pieces and then shrank into a hard ball 1/10 its previous size. The ship moved forward, and its drills reduced what little remained of the rock into its cargo bays. The engineers resumed salivating as they scanned it. It returned to the station, and a powerful pump mechanism of some kind filled the cargo containers full of water of some kind. An odd mechanism inside, like a clothes machine or other such mechanism, washed the ore of impurities and deposited it all into storage. The material, now easier to move thanks to the mixed liquid, pumped into parts of the station through pipes and conveyors, and then into refineries or small contained smelters. Here, it was slowly but precisely processed into metal ingots. The ingots themselves were compressed by further mechanisms, refined into steel, or simply sent out to be placed on pallets for shipping or use. Finally, as the drilling machine returned to the next asteroid, something happened to the station. A mechanism, like a gigantic claw, appeared out of one side, deploying like arms of a dry dock. 1,000 strange, flexible mechanical appendages appeared out of the station's larger hangar, and piece by piece, component by component, an entire ship, a cruiser-class ship, materialized in front of us component by component, from back to front. We all sat amazed as this ship, twice the size of the mining vessel, suddenly appeared in front of us. It was like a hypnotic dream watching this unfold. Thousands of odd appendages, each one having a different end, working in perfect concerted union to grab a component, then hold it down while another appendage used its different tool to screw in a bolt or weld a plate. The process continued as piece by precious piece each part was put in place, from the tip of its engine's nozzles to the front end of its glass bridge. It looked fancy, too. Curved edges, circular patterns, and rounded edges. Then, once it appeared as though it were complete, a completely different set of mechanical arms deployed, with the two large ones grabbing the ship to hold it in place. In a mesmerizing pattern of rainbow, a shiny coating of red, white, and pink paint was carefully put on the hull. Engineers scanning it could see an army of small drones and machines, moving parts and furniture around the interior, bolting them down. Then, something entirely unexpected. Once the ship was painted and fueled, the construction appendages were deployed again. An entire section of the ship, again, dismantled component by component, cleaned of paint and returned to storage. It was as if the mechanical monsters had baked a cake, then cut a chunk of it out. This chunk was then replaced by something else. A similar chunk of ship was then constructed, only this one bearing a powerful cannon, presumably a shipboard beam laser of some kind. A quick repaint later and the ship's engines suddenly roared to life, cleared the dry dock, then just like that, jumped out of the system. Moments later, the process began to repeat itself as the small mining frigate returned for its 10th trip. Engineers were besides themselves, unable to comprehend that this one lone human with its automated systems was able to do in the space of around 2 hours what our stations full of thousands of people take 6 months to do, and all this, done with advanced machinery, of course, but that not included, still done by only one man. Still impressive. Our demonstration was cut short by the sudden arrival of a Ramatai warship. Strange elongated things with heavy main weapons and odd-shaped hulls. We were expecting some attacks on human space, which is why we used a cloaked ship after all. But nothing, absolutely nothing prepared us for what happened next. The small mining frigate turned its gaze and charged at the newcomer. And as the Ramathai ship captain spat out his speech, they realized too late this tiny ship was on collision course. We wondered what it could do to the much larger, more powerful warship. We almost laughed at the act of defiance. Almost. Until those drills hit the hull. It carved through the Ramathai ship's meter-thick hull like a knife through butter. We could hear intercepted transmissions of panic and shock as the small drill quickly chewed through the hull material, leaving a gaping hole in the hull out of which hundreds of bodies of dead crew members spilled. As quickly as it went in, it casually popped out of the other side, then swooped in for another strike. The ship had been effectively gutted like a parasite had eaten a corpse, and it could do nothing as the mining ship quickly swooped in, aiming its drills at the much larger ship's bridge near the front. We recorded, in crisp detail and sound quality, the last desperate screams of the ship captain and its crew as they were either ground to pulp by the drills or thrown into space, by the hole. The ship then drilled its way through to the reactor, dropped one of its gravity bombs into the ship's engine room, then quickly shot back out the front backwards. The explosion was more than just a little impressive, as the Ramathai ship shattered into 3 distinct pieces. When radio screaming stopped and SOS calls for escape vessels went out of range, the drill ship fired out harpoons of a sort, digging long, flexible cabling into larger pieces of wreckage. The drill ship dragged the scrapped wreckage, and we watched in amazement as the multitude of appendages systematically ripped the wreck apart, precisely digging out important components and equipment. Each part, likely things the humans wanted, to disassemble for reverse engineering, was immediately put on pallets and set on an open deck. 4 large chunks were quickly towed, dismantled, and set for shipping within an hour of the engagement. A warship of the Ramathai, a ship that was feared in the galaxy, was just taken down and disappeared from reality by one dude in a mining rig. Within moments of the last chunk of wreckage being dismantled, the station started to work again. To our surprise, an entirely new ship was quickly assembled, fueled, and all the components and captured parts loaded onto it, then presumably spaced out of the star system. The mining rig returned to its normal operations, and another asteroid was quickly removed from the area. I stopped to think for a bit. Okay. Gentlemen, I would like us all to think for a moment. Think. Consider all that has transpired here before us, I said, and let my men think. I let a few minutes pass and then spoke again. We just saw a mining rig, a rock-chewing machine, turn a large starship that is one of the galaxy's many terrors into a pile of slag and parts. Now the humans will shortly have Ramathai tech as well. Consider humanity, and their now, albeit short-lived, but well-catalogued reputation for acquiring technology from those who attack them, I said, and allowed my men to think about it a bit more. Just as the mining rig finished another asteroid, one of my engineers squealed in terror as it turned, aiming its huge starship-chewing mandibles at us. It remained there for a few more. Moments then began to approach, quickly getting within striking distance, barely out of range of our ship's lasers. It would also appear that, with this kind of tech, humans can effectively mass-produce entire fleets of warships in a 20th of the time, maybe less than we do, and one single human with a drill can basically build an entire fleet by himself. Judging by their automation technology, it's likely they don't even need crew for some ships. Think about that for a moment, I said. Once again, a few minutes passed by and the drill ship sat there, patiently waiting for something to happen, staring at us. Now consider for a moment all I have just said. Does anybody else think that pissing these humans off would be a bad idea? I asked. Aye, sir, came the resounding yell from the crew in response. We are all agreed. Sergeant, hail the human ship. Let's apologize for our intrusion and politely beg for him to allow us to leave, I said. We hailed him, and within moments we had a video feed. It sort of looked human, but it was covered in cybernetics and machinery. Were these humans also insane that they changed their bodies so much? This level of cybernetic augmentation was unheard of, almost blasphemous in the galaxy. What do you want? He said. The biomechanical voice threw me off, and its appearance startled me a bit. I have no idea why I said the thing I said after this, but I guess I was so surprised I just blurted it out. Pardon me, sorry for the intrusion. May we please come in and have a chat over lunch? I said. The crew all looked at me, and I suddenly realized what I said. I slapped my own face in embarrassment. What I meant to say was, yeah, sure. Come on through. Just make sure you don't get caught by the wee beasties. They don't care what they find. If it ain't registered, it gets torn apart. See you in a few, he said, and disappeared. The mining rig turned around and docked itself onto the station, waiting for us. Wait, what? Pilot, go, I suppose, I said, still unable to comprehend what the hell just happened. That's it, just to the right side. Left side equals death, right side equals not death. The maglocks will secure you to the dock, he said through the radio. Might I ask why you allowed this? This is most unusual, I said, shuddering from the impact of the ship docking to the station. Well, you did ask politely. One of very few that did. Normally it's just power, hungry blowhards. It's so refreshing to finally see some actual civilized people in the galaxy, as opposed to the bloviating barbarians we usually find. Always happy to see something with actual intelligence instead of just another big wang to swing around. Anyway, you're in luck. It's Meatloaf Monday. You're in for a right treat. Come, on in. Let's hope you breathe oxygen, he replied. I sat there for a few minutes and wondered what to do. Eventually, I just gave up and yelled, "Lunchtime!" to the crew and headed to meet with the human. Enjoy another amazing story. As soon as we arrived in human space, things started to go wrong. Small things, tiny things, imperceptible things. A computer terminal running half a second slower for no reason. A gun turret randomly leaving its mounting and hanging off the side of the ship by its umbilical and power cables. Quickly fixed, but strange. And socks. For some reason, socks keep going missing, then mysteriously reappearing again sometime later. These humans were the talk of the town because of their absurd weapons technology, but something about them seemed off. We carefully docked to the local starbase, operating a bit slower than usual owing to the odd occurrences happening around our ship. We gently thudded as we docked, then scrambled to do a full system check. Everything seemed fine, though. Strangely enough, I got up out of my seat and walked towards the docking port for my job, diplomacy, only to stop in my tracks when the door got caught and failed to cycle properly. Oh, for the Emperor's sake, maintenance, the airlock door is stuck. I yelled and banged at it to release it. My percussive maintenance, as humans called it, worked. Surprisingly, again. The door closed, cycled normally, and opened again. My engineers, already overworked as it was, quickly surrounded the door, only to find nothing wrong with it. We've been suffering these odd annoyances every now and then since we entered human space. The priests and seers were going insane, claiming they were seeing shadows. Rodents, maybe? Vermin? I shook my head and left the ship, meeting with the human diplomatic corps on the station. My God, what a long trip, I idly said to myself. Trouble, Master Gargarus? The human diplomat, Todd, said as he held out his hand in greeting. No, just odd occurrences. No issue during transit, just strangeness. I shook his hand in greeting. Care to explain? He asked. It's not important. Probably poor construction at the dockyard that wasn't inspected properly. We will sort it out, I said. Ow! Thagathron! Came a noise from the airlock, followed by an angered slam. Oh. Dudes seem a bit preoccupied. Think you need reinforcements at all? We got a few engineers to spare. Maybe they can help, he said. Before I could voice an opinion, he let out a shrill noise from his lips, what the humans called a whistle, and a dozen human engineers and service technicians immediately swarmed into the ship. Well, thank you. I think it may allow my own men to rest. We haven't had any time to relax since we entered your space. I walked with him to the office we would share for the next week. So, to business first, or would you like some tea? He asked as I sat in my seat. Tea, obviously, I replied with a smile. A half an hour and a lovely cup of tea. Later, we had finalized some service contracts for fuel stations on our outer rim, when a human engineer walked in carrying something. He had it hidden in the palm of his hand, covered by an odd cloth or something. Found the problem, he gleefully said with the oddest, cheeky smile I had ever seen. Problem. Oh, those mechanical issues. What was it? Faulty circuit? I asked. Angus, he said. I remained quiet for what seemed an eternity. What? Angus, he said, and lifted the cloth off the object in his hand. There, standing tall, was a small creature around an inch and a half tall. It appeared to be wearing an ancient-looking mechanic's uniform, skin tight and dyed yellow. It had no feet, just two tiny little stubs. It appeared to be wearing a pair of bright red leather gloves, a tiny red nose, a row of sharp wolf-like teeth, and bright blue eyes that were covered in some kind of odd mask. Its helmet, made of similar material to its uniform, was dyed a bright blue color. The oddest thing about it, though, was its tail and its horns. The horns jutted out from aside its head, looking like a set of airplane wings, and its tail looked like an airplane tail. Angus. The gremlin, the engineer said. What the actual fuck is that? I squealed and hid behind my desk. It's a gremlin. Never seen a gremlin before? He said. Well, obviously I never have. This thing is what's responsible for all the damage, I asked, shivering behind my desk. Yeah. Go on, Angus. You know what to do, the engineer said. The creature in his hand, its tiny, squeaky voice punctuated with the old gruff tone of a grizzled veteran, babbled some incoherent words at me. I sat there, unable to process any of it, and my translator nearly short-circuited trying to understand it. A few seconds of silence passed. The engineer finally spoke. I take it your translators don't understand Scots Gaelic at all, do they? He asked. Is that another one of your absurdly numbered dialects? I asked, finally coming up from under my desk. Yeah, I speak it. I'll translate. He says, "Dear sir, we apologize for the sabotage we caused to you and your vessel." The engineer said, mocking an accent similar to the creature. I sat there, bewildered. The creature babbled again. The engineer, once again copying the accent, translated. "We have repaired all the damage we caused and optimized your systems as an apology." I stood up and looked at the creature, still bewildered as it babbled another set of incoherent guttural noises and half-phrases. "We were not aware of your connection with the Terran Federation, and our operatives have been informed as such. Sorry for the inconvenience," the engineer said, then both stood there with smiles on their faces. I approached the creature cautiously and studied it. Him, for a while. I presented a hand to him. Apology accepted." The engineer spoke with that same guttural pronunciation, and the creature responded by grabbing one of my fingers, shaking it vigorously, hopped off the hand, then vanished, into a shadow in the corner as it said another thing. I looked at the engineer for clarification. He said, "Cheers, mate, tiffin time," and said another sorry about the door. What in absolute oblivion is a gremlin? And more importantly, why? "Are they working for you? Why did they sabotage my ship?" I asked. A gremlin is a supposedly mythological creature of Gaelic or Scottish origin, which is a subspecies of the creature known as a Brunaith, brownie, or house elf. Turns out they ain't mythological creatures, just anomalous entities sharing the same plane of existence. And yes, they do work for us, mostly, the engineer replied. I blinked. I didn't even know I could blink. Okay. So that's a gremlin and a brownie. Anomalous entities that... What? A gremlin is a creature that is the distant cousin of a brownie, a so-called house elf, and is basically the opposite of a house elf. Gremlins are mechanically inclined creatures that mess with mechanical or electronic devices in an abnormal manner, disassembling engines and removing components. Sometimes it's malicious, sometimes it's playful, sometimes it's just to see what a thing is, Todd said. Well, that explains that, I suppose. What? I couldn't really formulate any words. Here's the short story. Years ago, talking. About pre-FTL here, one of the United States aircraft carriers was on patrol. They kept having weird mechanical faults on the ship. Random failures, odd short circuits, peculiar failures. Then one day, one of our Speak Ops boys, you know them, the Legionnaires, the engineer said. I shuddered and nearly jumped out of my seat. Oh, yes, I do remember them. The terrifying super soldiers you blasphemed into existence that tore an entire Dactharian regiment to pieces in 2 hours. Yes, I do remember them, I said with a shudder. Well, yeah, one of them. He went into one of the engine rooms for an inspection and came back out with one of these guys in his hands. Turns out the blasphemous nature of the Legionnaires disables the creature's ability to teleport and stuff, so... Yeah, we captured one of them, the engineer said with a smile. Ah, I see. What happened? What do you usually do with anomalous entities? I asked. The only logical thing we knew to do. Try and see if it was searching for stable employment and introduce it to the concept of medical aid and labor unions, Todd replied with a laugh. Okay, I said. And as it turns out, it was. Gremlins don't really have good dental care, you see, same with brownies. Soon as this dude got hit with his first dental appointment, he didn't have to pay for. We got 24 of them signing up for service within a week. 5 years later, gremlins and brownies were serving in the U.S. Army as we started sending rockets to Mars. Brownies keep the equipment clean, gremlins keep it operational. They sabotage the vessels of our enemies too. Within reason, of course, Todd said. Sabotage within reason? How do you do that? I asked. Small things, jamming doors, broken consoles, a cable here, a pipe there. Just a rattle and a rave to keep engineers occupied, exhausting them mentally and physically. We have strict orders and agreements with them to never mess with ship reactors or any kind of life support systems. We made that perfectly clear when we started this whole thing, the engineer said in turn. Okay, wait. Firstly, you humans encounter some odd creatures that slip between universes and stuff. Then you offer them dental care, and suddenly they work for you? And these creatures, it can teleport out into the void of space and sabotage any vessel they encounter, and they work for you, I asked, my voice creaky and breaking from the surprise. The two men stared at each other for a bit, shrugged, and said, "Well, yeah," I thought for a moment. I shrugged. Meh. That's all you got?" They both said. "Well, the Legionnaires, the giant planet cannon you made, then the huge starfleet you guys have that outnumbers us 10-1, then the massive arsenal of nuclear weapons, then the whole finished of the Galavanians. In 1 month thing you did. All things considered, taming of an anomalous, multi-dimensional entity that screws with machinery and cleans floors. This was pretty tame in comparison," I replied with a shrug. "That's fair. I have one question, however. Where can we get a gremlin or two?" I asked. "Be nice, be polite, and offer dental care and freshly laundered socks. Gremlins are why socks go missing after you put them in the dryer. They like it for some reason," Todd said. "I knew it!" the engineer yelled and charged out the door. "Angus, give me back my ugly Christmas socks. They were a gift from my grandma," he screamed angrily as he charged out into the warehouse. Heard a series of incoherent ramblings coming from a very gruff-sounding but tiny voice. "Well, that happened," Todd said. "Still not the craziest thing you lot have done. Can you give me the translation matrix data for this Scots Gaelic, please?" I asked, returning to my desk. "Sure. Ancient or modern?" he replied. "Enjoy another amazing story." The cold void of space in the small and somewhat isolated star system bustled with activity, the likes of which hadn't been seen in centuries. Tens of thousands of ships of every conceivable size, shape, and length battled with each other in this tiny space. Massive battlecruisers slowly drifted towards each other, only for one or both to be met by a hail of close-range broadside fire. Other sleeker ships used beam cannons or laser weapons to strike targets from incredible ranges, while others exchanged fighter or bomber wings. Pulses of blaster fire raced across the cold void as the battle raged on in earnest. Flashes of light as fireballs erupted from hulls hit by missiles, explosions in the middle of nowhere indicating a missile had been shot before hitting its target. Streaks of solid light, beams from heavy anti-ship lasers lit up the empty void, sometimes followed by a ship being hit. Sometimes a ship's shields would be out of commission, other times the shield would simply dissipate the strike, and the ship would return fire with its own beam of energy. I pulled my flight controls hard, to the right as I tried to escape a missile. Luck was on my side as my wingman shot it down with his laser cannons. We regrouped and went back to chasing a few Citadel-class missiles heading towards our flagship. The missiles were the size of a small destroyer but moved very slowly, relatively speaking, but if they hit they could do catastrophic damage. We raced towards one of the four and started firing on it. We had to keep our distance. The explosion from these things would kill us both if we were too close. The majority of the battle took place in the skies around the larger warships, fighters, bombers, and strike craft engaging in unending dogfights. An eternal ocean of swirling engine trails and streaks from light cannons and beam strikes, flashes in every conceivable direction. A veritable rainbow of colors flashed and streaked through the cold void. Hundreds of thousands of fighter craft, warships of every size and strength, and craft of every kind fought in the star system, all warring to seize control of the small but rich planet in the star system. I peeked out at it for a short moment, as my fingers pressed various trigger buttons. A small green forest planet in a star system of 5 planets, this one, the second world from its star. The thing is, it had the perfect climate for farming and the richest soil fertility rate of any farm world in the galaxy. This tiny world could easily feed billions, especially with current tech. We could overproduce food supply for decades and have room to expand to other farm worlds. I snapped back to the present moment as my bomber's hull-mounted plasma cannon roaring to life. The plasma bolt was going to hit its target, and we both bugged out as fast as possible. The explosion radiated out towards us just as we escaped the radius, a spatial shock wave from the heat hitting our backs. We retreated towards a new target. A lone destroyer had snuck out of its formation and was now alone near a small asteroid. It was an easy kill, and we were close by. It was only now I had the chance to look around and see just how immense this battle was. I couldn't count how many Warships were in the star system, tens of thousands at least. This was the biggest single battle in galactic history. This was compounded as my Navicomp notified me of an incoming Dreadnought-class warship. This was about to become a lot worse. Dreadnoughts were fleet killers, absurdly huge lumps of metal, each with one explicit purpose: to destroy entire fleets. If one was coming, it meant that its enemy fleet was about to face catastrophic loss. We headed to our target, a small, partially damaged destroyer hiding in an asteroid belt. Barely making it to the point we could hide behind a few asteroids and hit it from behind its visual and radar coverage. Just as we were about to accelerate to attack speed, a staggeringly huge warship appeared in the star system. It was the Dreadnought. "Dreadnought!" I yelled over comms and alerted my comrades of the encroaching target. "Affirm! Target sighted!" my wingman replied. "Quick! Get into cover!" I yelled as the ship started to materialize into real space. The process of FTL travel was accomplished through the use of what we called subspace engines. The spool-up process for this was long and annoying, depending on the mass of the ship in question. Transferring entire ship masses into star systems could take hours, as molecule by molecule, the ship's mass had to be precisely moved and rearranged inside of its new destination from its old point in space. This, however, was a lot faster. Within minutes, I saw it fully materialize and its engines suddenly fire up. Wait, what is that? I've never seen a design like that before, my wingman Gallus said as he flew next to me. Me neither. I don't recognize any faction insignias either. What even is this thing? How is it so heavily armed? I said, looking at the sheer absurd quantity and quality of weaponry arrayed across its massive hull. It then blasted its massive engines and moved across the star system with more speed and agility than any ship its size had any right to. We gunned our own engines in a vain effort to try keep up with it. Why? I had no idea. I was mesmerized by the sight of it. I flew in slightly closer, trying to see what kinds of details I could see off this thing's hull. I got a bit too close, as one of the huge battleship cannons on the thing suddenly flipped around and aimed its bus-sized barrel at me. Again, moving with more speed and dexterity than it had any damn right to. I shat myself and quickly pulled back. It was now I noticed I wasn't the only one who was fascinated by this thing, as at least a dozen other ships, including the same destroyer we had been tracking earlier, had decided to take a look at it. The gun turret that aimed at me snapped back to forward-facing position, and the ship continued to accelerate as we flew around it. Then suddenly everyone but myself broke away from it as a sound from the radio suddenly spoke up. "Terran! It's a Terran warship!" A radio call sounded as suddenly I found myself alone, flying close to the behemoth. The name of the humans, the so-called Terrans, is one that is held in reverence and infamy by the galaxy. Many years ago, a great scourge threatened life itself. Humanity's war against it, and the absurd planet-killing weapons and star-exploding super-dreadnoughts it brought to bear for this war, made the galaxy collectively crap itself. When the war was over, the Terrans just vanished back into the cold void from whence they came, and over the next 1,000 years disappeared from the galaxy's collective conscience. Before this moment, a Terran ship had not been seen for centuries. Now, there was one here, suddenly appearing at the apex of the largest battle in the galaxy's history. Every ship suddenly ceased fire, every fighter retreated to its flagship. The plethora of colors and energy that had moments ago flashed across the void, now replaced by the cold, empty hue of space, as everyone, regardless of faction or zeal, didn't want to accidentally draw the warship's ire. I, however, was transfixed, hypnotized by this strangely ornate-looking warship. Between the cannons, the laser defenses, and shield emitter arrays, a beautiful sight of gold, silver, and purple trim and detailing. It looked handcrafted, too. This ship looked less like a death machine and more like a carefully assembled work of art the closer I got to it. It was heading straight towards the planet. I stuck close to it, unable to take my eyes off the thing as thousands of warships slipped past. "What even is this?" I idly said. It felt like a sequence in a fever dream. As we quickly passed the massive warship fleet that had stopped its fighting. Glints of silver and gray paint flew past me as I stuck close to the ship as the fleet carefully maneuvered around it. The flashy black and red paint jobs of the opposing fleet flew past, still at speeds far too unreasonable for a ship this size. It made its way through the planet's atmosphere. There was no heat, no shockwave, no distortion. Normally, when a ship this size enters a planet's atmosphere, there is chaos due to thermal exchange. But the shield. It was as if we were warping the atmosphere around us to slip through it. Was their technology so powerful they could safely land a dreadnought on a planet? The thought petrified me. I had no more time to think about it, though. The ship stopped its descent, and with the softness of a gentle flower, it touched down on a rocky outcrop near a field. I moved away from it and landed near it, close enough I could smell the exhaust fumes. I got up out of my cockpit and noticed the sets of eyes staring at me from behind windows. Humans. Just as terrifying as the legends spoke of them, thousands of them staring me down from tiny viewports. A dozen cannons and turrets swung around to aim at me. I showed them my service rifle, pistol, and knife, making it clear I was leaving them behind inside my ship, and closed the cockpit canopy. The turrets swiveled away, and I wandered from the towering behemoth. I had no real idea as to what to do here. I noticed a human, a male by the looks of it, get on some kind of ancient two-wheeled transport machine. He inserted an odd metallic item in it and turned it. The sounds of a heavy-grade internal combustion engine filled the air of the valley. I retrieved a spyglass, which was actually the detached scope from my rifle, and turned on the feed from my helmet. He revved the engine, the thunderous roar being heard for miles around. I had been watching it so closely, I hadn't noticed a human had left the ship and was now standing next to me. The machine was clearly ancient, but looked like it was fresh, off the assembly line. Shiny metal parts and freshly coated paint. It looked immaculate. The human who presumably owned it sat on it, now wearing a strange uniform with an odd helmet with an elongated cap, shading the eyes from the sun. He revved up the engine and drove away. The beast of a machine drove easily across the terrain, leaving no trace of its presence but charged up hills, across mounds and over short cliffs and bumps, with the operator performing what appeared to be tricks while all this took place. This continued for a few minutes before he finally drove back to a small clearing nearby. He pulled off his helmet and reached into a backpack he was carrying. "Flowers?" I said to myself. "Shh," I heard a voice say next to me. I jumped out of my skin, but was immediately grabbed and shushed before I could scream. There was a human next to me. One hand over my mouth to shut me up, one hand holding a finger to her lips. SSH. I nodded and watched. The male approached a small clearing. He kneeled by a small mound with a slab of stone poking out of the ground and gently laid the flowers on it. It finally hit me. It was a grave. We had started a full-blown war just before a human's funeral ritual. I shuffled nervously and cleared my throat. "Sorry." I was shushed again, but this time with a smile as the ritual progressed. I stood awkwardly watching the display carry on. The entire time my helmet was recording the entire thing. At this point, I had no idea the entire fleet was nervously shuffling and silently apologizing as we waited for the ritual to play out. Eventually, the male at the grave stood back up. I could clearly see streams of liquid coming from his eyes as he got back on his odd vehicle and returned to the ship. I could hear what he was saying thanks to my advanced hearing. Doesn't matter how many times I do that, it never gets any easier. He was embraced by several others, a mix of civilians and soldiers by the looks of it, and was herded into the confines of the ship in tears. I looked around for any explanation. The door closed and the human female next to me smiled. "Just a dad's yearly trip to say goodbye. His son died in the Rakandi War," she said. "But that was 1,000 years ago," I replied, bewildered. "Yeah, what's your point?" she replied. "You mean to tell me that man has been performing this ritual every year for 1,000 years?" I asked. "Yes." "Your point?" she asked. I stayed silent and wondered what was going on. "Ah, I see. You don't have a point," she said. "I guess you need to go back to your war then. Please do remember, however, show respect for the dead and try not to disturb the grave." Wait. Who exactly is buried here? Is there a name? I asked pleadingly. The Butcher of Haktos 4, of course. James Johnny. Boy Martinez. My jaw and the jaws of all others listening and watching hit the floor and remained that way. The legendary human warrior who single-handedly held off an entire Rakandi war hive, taking out a hive mind just to allow a refugee ship the chance to escape. She sighed. Every year his dad comes out here, performs some tricks on his son's faithful, old dirt bike and lays a bouquet at his grave. Just like Johnny would always do before signing up for military service after the New Scotland invasion. We have our own ceremony to thank soldiers like this back home, but this is his dad's personal thing, she said. The human homeworld is rumored to be thousands of light years from here. Why is he buried on this tiny grassland planet all the way? Out here? I asked, bewildered. Because Johnny said he wanted to be buried somewhere quiet and cozy. What's quieter and cozier than this place? She replied calmly. I had no real answer and just stood around. I had no idea what to do. After what seemed an eternity, I finally gave up. I guess we can't stay here then. I'll inform the fleet we need to stay away from here, I said. I was hoping you'd say that. Do take care. We'll probably be back here at the same time next year, she said, and walked back into the ship. With that, the dreadnought returned to space as effortlessly as it arrived. From down on the ground, I could see the shield warping the air around it. I wanted to go, I wanted to return to my fleet, but something felt wrong. I couldn't. Not yet. I sat in my cockpit for a few minutes, just trying to make sense of what was going on. I got the radio call. Janus, come back to the ship. We're going home. I can't be here anymore, my commander said. Give me a moment. There's something I need to do first, I replied. I stood up from the cockpit and went through my backpack for something. I knew I had it with me, and indeed, I found what I was looking for. I headed to the grave, purpose in every step. I approached it and gently placed a little pin my broodmate made for me on the tombstone and gave it a salute. It was a pin made to look like a few leaves from one of our homeworld's banban trees. I stood at attention for a minute and then returned to my ship. I returned to my ship, got back to space to be met with a legion of questioning eyes. I simply shrugged. It didn't feel right to just leave, I said, and wandered off to my bunk to rest. I headed for a day's rest. There was too much shame in the rest of the fleet. Commanders and admirals all just called each other to retreat. Both sides, even the mercenaries, just turned around and returned home. The uproar caused by this event was on a galactic scale. Not only did we find the resting place of one of the galaxy's great heroes, we also had a close encounter with a Terran warship, and lived through it. Our Emperor was more distressed than anyone else at this revelation, and when I, a lowly pilot, was called to meet with him, I was shaking, terrified, awed, the great Emperor himself sitting upon the silver throne. I had worn my best battle dress that day, as good as a lowly pilot could afford anyway. Janus. Corporal. Yes? He said. Yes, my lord. I replied. I saw the video recording of your encounter. Why did you break ranks? He glared at me. I know not, my lord. The ship? I was hypnotized. The detailing on the hull, its sudden appearance, I know not. I shuddered. His gaze was scaring. Me? Is everything within that video accurate? Did you see it all with your own eyes as truth? He said, leaning in to look me in the eyes. Yes, my lord, as was truth. Do you think all human warships are that heavily armed? He asked. I hadn't given it any thought up to now, my lord. I suppose so. It was a dreadnought after all. That was not a dreadnought. Humans have this thing where they do not understand the concept of scale and have the engineering prowess to match it. What you saw was a Basilisk class, a battle cruiser. The dreadnoughts are 10 times that size, he said. The court erupted in a terrified gasp. I went pale and stood there shivering, but that's a lesson for another day. As for you, Janus, he stood from the throne and approached. Why, exactly. Did you put a pin on the grave? That was a broodmate pin, wasn't it? Yes, my lord. I had no flowers or anything, and it just felt wrong to leave without doing something. I said, shivering as he stared at me. Good answer. I am now stripping you of your commission as pilot for the Royal Navy. I have a new job for you. Praetorian Janus, he said. The crowd gasped in shock. My face went pale and I had no idea what else to say. That was a massive promotion I had just been given. Pardon? Do you question me? He said, strangely calm. No, my emperor. No question at all, I replied with haste. That's what I thought. Your new job shall be as my personal Praetorian. Your exclusive duty will be to travel down to that planet every month as my representative and put flowers on his grave. Then come home. Do you know why? He asked. Is there some personal significance to the hero buried there, my lord? I asked. Yes. Johnny boy. I was there. I was there 1,000 years ago at the last stand on Haktos IV. I was but a mere podling, barely able to speak. But I saw him. He had been reduced to sitting against a wall as both his legs had been. Ripped off, one eye gone, the right arm in pieces. He fought hard. He kept screaming at us to go as we boarded the transport to evacuate. The medics tried to rescue him. He screamed at them to go, refusing support until everyone was off-world. I owe him everything. It was he who set the example that all our military forces now follow: selflessness, duty, honor, loyalty, sacrifice, he said, returning to his throne. I had been attempting to contact the Terran Union for centuries, asking for information. I hadn't been able to show my proper respects. Until now. Owing to the fact I am now the emperor of a galaxy-spanning empire, I can't go myself for obvious reasons. You will go on my behalf. From this point on, you will every month go down to that world, place a bouquet of flowers, thank him for his service, and then come home. That will be your job from now on. Understand? He asked. Yes, my lord, I said, standing to full attention. If I may ask something first, what exactly are we going to do about the Radanai? We were at war with them barely a week ago. I have contacted the Grandmaster, and we have come to a personal agreement of sorts. The war with them is effectively over. No further action will be taken. They have their own debt to pay to the humans, the Emperor said, to a loud gasp of shock from the court. Didn't see that coming, I said. Indeed. Think carefully for a moment, Praetorian Janus. Think. Before humanity arrived, we had been fighting against the Pharaoni hordes for millennia. They effectively ended that war. We never asked them to. We never told them to. We never bought them, convinced them. Nothing. We simply warned them of the horrors they could face. The children lost, the lives destroyed, the worlds ruined. And, without even telling us why, they engaged. No prompt, no bribe, nothing. They simply saw evil and threw themselves at it to make it go away. A war that lasted thousands of years, ended in just 8 months. Johnny Boy was but one of many millions of humans we lost. One of many millions who gave everything they had just to save some random aliens they never even knew. This, apparently, is something all humans have in them. The ability to give everything, just for a brief moment of someone else's happiness. That's what you saw down there, Janus. A basilisk warship. A crew of thousands, taking time out of their patrols, expending valuable fuel and food supplies, potentially leaving their route of operations open to pirates or worse, all just to give a father a few hours alone to say goodbye to the son he lost. That is what happened down there. And we disturbed that moment by fighting each other above that world. A sacrifice forsaken, forgotten, abandoned, dishonor of the worst kind by disturbing that man's moment of peace. A crime of disrespecting the sacrifice made by a man who had everything to lose but gave it anyway. A crime we will now make amends for. You begin your new duties in the morning, Janus. Make sure you carry them out appropriately, with dignity, honor, and hope. The Emperor said. I saluted the Emperor and made my way to my new quarters, alongside the other Praetorians who greeted me with kindness. As expected, the very next day, I was back on that world, a laurel wreath on the tombstone, my hand to my temple. Thank you, Johnny. Thank you. Thanks for diving into this story with me. Don't miss out on the next one. Hit that subscribe button, give this video a big thumbs up, and drop a comment below with your thoughts. I'd love to hear what you think.